I first want to tell everyone that on July 12th, I had to have emergency surgery to have a tumor removed, and it was a brain tumor. And although it's a grade 4, I've got to tell you, I'm doing really good. I'm improving every day, and I am fighting this so that I can be with you longer and make more sculptures. But what I have to tell you today is extremely important for all of you starseeds, and I know that you know which ones you are, and it is because you felt when you came to Earth, when you were quite young, you even felt there was something important you were here to do. Many of you have lived in your heart most of your life, and that is extremely important for us starseeds. We have to be in our hearts right now. So what I'm going to be sharing is what information has come through to me more recently since my surgery. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I've had contact with the Galactic Federation, the various councils and alliances, and they have given me the opportunity to revisit the time before we came to Earth and why we chose to come to Earth and to help humanity at this time. It is one of the most important times, as people have been talking throughout this conference about the ascension. And we're here not so we can ascend, not that we aren't going to even grow greater in our ascension as we work our mission, but we came here to help the humans that are ready to ascend. And not all of them are ready to ascend. I was told back in 1997 that 1 out of 7 humans will actually complete their ascension. And we were hoping for more. In fact, many of us that came here in this lifetime are already masters who gave up their time, their positions, to come here to be able to help humanity. So going back to when I was in the hospital, I first want to say that the first night prior to my surgery, I had so many people praying for me. It was just really overwhelming how many wonderful people. And I was visited literally by so many dozens of different star beings that came into my room and allowed me to see them. And they were so precious, each one so unique in their own way. And yet I found them to be absolutely beautiful. I felt their hearts and I felt their love. And then the very next day when I had my surgery, they actually took me, my soul, out of my body, and I went before the council. What happened at that time was phenomenal. I had no idea how very important this mission is for all of us. Every one of us are equal in this mission. We have important missions, and it has to do with us using our powers. Before we agreed, I was shown how we traveled in the universe to different stars or different planets to ask for assistance from the different alliances as well as other councils. The cities on these other planets were tremendous and so unique. And it reminds me almost of living in the movie like Star Wars or Star Trek movies, because they're so very similar. But what was most interesting about this is the way we went in groups as we found those people that wanted to volunteer. And many of them were not human, not humanoid species. Some of them were insectoid and other species. But it was the love in their heart, their need to assist us, that gave them that desire to be with us, to work with us. So we have many different races. I mean, we're talking literally hundreds of different races that are on Earth right now. The most important thing we can do right now is to come into our power. You all know there's going to be challenges. There's going to be events that will be unfolding, one right after another and another. We all know about the dark forces that rule planet Earth, but we can stop them by uniting together. And this is why we've come. If you think about it, there are hundreds of thousands of us starseeds all over the planet. I've had contact with many of them throughout the whole planet. I've even had contact with a few people that have contacted me and told me they couldn't give me their name or where they live, but they actually told me they were not from Earth, but they came to Earth as observers. And they came here to see what humanity needed most. And if we starseeds needed further assistance as well. And they thanked me and thanked all of us for coming forward and doing our part. What's going to be happening in the very near future, with all these different events, it has been designed primarily to look like terrorist attacks. What the star people are saying is if we start now working with our love and light on a continuous basis, that power is the greatest power in the universe. Nothing exceeds it. Nothing is more powerful. And it is when we envelop ourselves in the white light, allow it to run through us and to shield us, and using unconditional love, that we literally send unconditional love from our heart chakra into another's heart chakra. And we do this to diffuse those negative ones of their power and to empower those positive ones to become even more powerful. What surprised me was I didn't realize all the powers that the starseeds came in with. And I was shown these powers. Not only do the starseeds have the ability to remote view, but to jump the different dimensions. And as an example of that, they were showing me that should martial law actually take place, and we were in a position where we needed to protect ourselves or protect a group, if we're leading a group, to whether it's a stargate, a ship, or to shelter, that we have the ability to envelop the group even in our powers and move them into another dimension so that we cannot be found and that we will be able to come back into the third dimension when it's safe. We also have the ability to bilocate, the ability to fly. And I've talked to many of you starseeds who have told me about your dreams of flying. And even I had a dream, or actually I should say it was in the etheric realm, where I was being shown how to remember to fly. And I remember a voice looking down at the ground and a voice saying, "Oh, what are you doing up there? You can't fly, get down." And my first thought was, believe. Our powers come to us by what we believe we can do. We sabotage ourselves when we don't believe that we can do it. So this is the time when we must believe. We also need to know how to protect ourselves. And I will give you an example. A few years ago, I found myself on a draconian ship. I was shackled to a chair, and there was a draconian captain, and he had kind of like a velociraptor type head and a body armor on. And he said to me, "We will give you all the money you want, your own army, any of the things you want to be comfortable in your life, all the riches, as long as I change from the light and go to work for them. The interesting thing was, these draconians are also known as Isis on Earth. They even showed me their spinal column, how to recognize them in human form. But the most important part was, not only did they make a great offer, but I gave them a great reply. I said, thank you so much for the offer. I honor you for what you are here to do, that you are playing the part so that humanity can learn what it is to come into the light. But I am of the light, and I will always be of the light. And I will love you unconditionally. And I sent unconditional love into his heart. And I said, if you are ready to transform to the light, I will be happy to take you. At that point, I was returned back to my bed. And for 6 months, I had a virus. And I just couldn't get over it. But the interesting thing is, I also learned that this virus was something that has been used by our dark forces that try to rule this planet. They use the viruses in the chemtrails and in other things. These viruses, they've been experimenting with for some time. So what we really need to do is to know how to protect ourselves, to help others protect themselves, as well as to keep the light around the planet while all this is going on. Now, I know a lot of you have said, I won't watch the news, I don't like the news, it's too negative. But my guides have always told me, I need to know where we need to send our light and our unconditional love. And therefore, we need to know what countries, what people need our help. I'm also offering for anyone that wants to contact me, that needs any assistance, that you can contact me through my email. And I'm sure that that will be put on afterwards, but I'll give it to you right now. And it's ctcrawford1949@gmail.com. One of the other things I want to tell you about when I was in the hospital was I was visited by some of the most awesome star beings who actually put a piece of their aspect into the sculptures to help each and every starseed that gets one to have contact. I didn't realize this, but they also said the sculptures will act as like a transmitter. And even though I've been told I will be going back to the ship in the near future, I'm still going to be here for a while, so you have to put up with me for probably maybe another year. But when I go back to the ship, I will be going in my body that's in stasis, and I will be coming back here, and I will be assisting a lot of you. The sculptures will also act to help you connect with your star family, with the council, when you need assistance. But do you need a sculpture? And I have to answer quite honestly, some of you are very awake now, having conscious contact. So no, you don't need a sculpture. It's only if you really feel you want one, or your guides tell you you need to get one. We don't have much time from what they showed me. So I do know that within the next 2 years, we will be finally realizing the full event. And yes, this will be with a planetary system coming in, which people call Nibiru or Planet X. And this is something that we do not have to experience. In fact, we won't. We will be lifted off of the planet. We will either go through stargates or we'll go on ships, and we will get to observe the transformation of planet Earth from above, from a distance, watching it and watching the beauty as the planet transforms. And that's what it's truly about. It's about Earth being a school, a third dimensional school for the human souls to evolve, to ascend. That's really what it's all about. And during the last days, it is going to be a fight between the dark and the light. We have numerous warriors that are on Earth now, and many more that are coming to Earth. Some are Syrian warriors of light, some are Arcturians, and we've got others that are blue race of Syrian warriors of light that I only in the last few years got to meet and get to know. But we've got other warriors. We've even got archangels already on this planet. We have got so many of you wonderful stars to be amongst all of you, that we will be working together. Now in 19...
Cynthia, I just wanted to say, for one, thank you so much for saying that about the news and being aware, because that's such a misled thing in the spiritual New Age community, where people don't want to watch the news because it lowers their vibration, I've heard, or they don't want to hear about Fukushima because it's going to, bring them into fear. And I've always said a great master is aware of everything, all of their surroundings, not just the little bubble in Asheville or Sedona or wherever they want to be living in that. So thank you so much for saying that, because that really has always resonated with me, and also with many people that I've been interviewing and speaking to and talking to all over the world. It's the same thing. So to hear you say that really resonated with me. And like I said, when I saw your Arcturian sculpture from your website, that really resonated with me, and I could share this with you. I have been on board the Arcturian mothership outside this Earth's planet, and I know my part and who I am on that level. So, there's many of us on this webinar together that are doing what we can. And when you said that, that just really hit me. So just thank you for that, and for bringing that to light, because you're the first person other than me that I've heard that from, that you need to be aware of everything. So when things happen, you know how to react with your family, with your friends, you know what to do, and it's go time, and you're not just sitting there meditating. So thank you. Thank you.
And I'm glad you said that, because the other thing is that when we have those of the dark that are creating all this havoc, and if we send unconditional love into their heart chakra, all we have to do is put the light around them and send it to them. They just, through our thoughts even, send unconditional love, and it diffuses them of their power. And I know this for my own self, because at one time I was about to be attacked, and instantly my guide said, surround yourself in the light and surround the other person in the light and send unconditional love from your heart into his. And when I did that, he literally flew backwards. So we do have the power. I talked to another woman who also had the same thing happen to her when she was walking in San Francisco one evening in her neighborhood, and a serial rapist attacked her, or was about to attack her. And immediately she surrounded him in the light and sent love to his heart and said, you don't want to hurt me. And the guy was so totally confused, he couldn't do anything. She actually took his knife from him. That's how powerful this is. So we have to understand that our powers are greater. And it's only when we don't believe that we have that power that we don't come into it. We've got to realize these are our true powers.
And everybody possesses that. And same as when I've been attacked many times by military, my labs, I've been all sorts of things. But when I remember and blast that light, the light is always stronger. And there's a couple of questions that popped up really quickly. One person, Brandy, I have a hard time watching the news because it hurts me so much that I literally shut down and get depressed for weeks, depending on the severity of what I hear. Some stories that have kept me down on and off for years. I'm not sure how to overcome that. I would think knowing what triggers I need to stay away from would be a service to others, by the way, a service to myself. Me, I look at the news as really, I laugh at it. To me, I look at it as comical. I don't take it as serious because it's not my world that I'm co-creating. It's the crumbling of the old world that I'm laughing at on CNN. So don't take it personally would be my answer. But Cynthia, what do you have to say?
Well, I understand what they're saying, because I'll have to tell you, when I was in the hospital and heard about the shootings in Texas, I did cry, but it was quite an emotional thing for me, because it was like the star people showing me what was going to happen, and this was just one of the many events that are going to be unfolding. But what I did was I had to, number one, realize that those who died in this, that they were immediately out of pain, and they were immediately in the love, unconditional love. So what I did was I sent the love and light to all of the relatives and all the people in the area that were experiencing this. I did watch on the news where a little boy, and I can't remember, I think he was like 10 or so, and he had made these little devices that you blow on them and they spin, and he said what you do is blow unconditional love on them and it'll make the love grow bigger and bigger. And I thought that was so precious that a little child would do that. And by the way, talking about little children, I have to tell you, I was so honored to have a woman contact me from Canada who actually goes on the ships on a regular basis, healing the starseed children, many from Earth, and the hybrids, and those from other planets that need healing. She has twin boys that are 8 years old, and when she goes on the ship from time to time, her husband and her boys will go with her, and immediately they go into their true bodies, which is in stasis again on the ships, and they are little blue people, and they're precious. They're almost like a sort of a Zeta type race, but a little bit more humanoid. And her 8-year-old boys are in their full adult bodies then, and they all work together. I also have several other of you wonderful starseeds that have been on the ships and are being trained on the ships and have described the ships to a T. But as far as I want to get back to the news, one of the most important things we can do is, instead of feeling the sorrow immediately when we hear of this, envelop them in the light and see what it is that they have taught us, those that have passed over. And let's honor them instead of being afraid or being hurt. Let's honor them. In fact, the star seeds, or star people, different races, when they have to take a life, which they don't like taking lives, but when they have to take a life to save another light worker, they always honor them, no matter how bad that being was, because they understand the need for duality, for there are no lessons learned if there is not the good and the bad to choose from. This is humanity's time to choose to walk in the light, to choose to be of the Christ consciousness. And that has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with living in the heart without any judgment, prejudice, greed, fear, resentments. It's seeing the God within each and every being, or what the star people call the source within each and every being. That's what it's all about.
So what you're saying is that the understanding that we all will pass on to heaven is the grounding force that when events happen where lots of lives are lost, like the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, many of those souls were volunteer souls that volunteered to do that, and other events that have happened, 9/11, because now, and everyone on this webinar has the understanding that we are these greater gods and goddesses, that we're just transitioning. It's okay when these things happen. That's that soul's path. Don't take it personally. That's why I say I laugh at some of the news, because I know it's that transition. So such a key tool, what you just said, is the understanding that you and the rest of us possess that help us mentally prepare and transition for what's to come. So thank you for that.
Thank you. The other thing that was really exciting was when the humans do finally ascend into the higher dimension, they will go on to a fifth dimensional world. Actually, it's going to be like an Earth, and it's beautiful. I was taken there so that I could understand it. And this is where they learn to integrate amongst other star beings. And this is also where they learn to how to work with one another and honor one another without judgment. Then after they are complete with this fifth dimension, they then get to go from there. And what was interesting, it sort of reminded me when they were showing the various choices we have as we continue our ascension. It was kind of like going on a job interview in which there are all different groups, whether it's the Galactic Federation, Ashtar Command, the Syrian Warriors of Light. There's so many different races and groups that we can join. And we can join them for a short period, or we can join them for a long time. I didn't realize until my experience before the council that I have one of my aspects is with the Galactic Federation, and that's the aspect that is here in this human hybrid body at this time. But I also have an Arcturian side to me that's in a parallel Earth. So that was quite interesting. I was told a few years ago, a guy contacted me and said he had gotten transmission from an Arcturian that said that they had a message for me. And the message was, when I had asked if I could be an Arcturian in my next lifetime, they said, you already are another aspect on a parallel Earth. How else did you know how to sculpt us? And that was a great experience. And sometimes we need other people to help validate what we think and what we are working on. So are there any questions to this at this point?
Yes. Yes, we have a few questions. Another question from the first person to sort of finish. Brandon, not to keep going on about the news, but what about the stories that are staged or not real that I don't know, that I'm struggling with news being necessary, I guess? You know, saying like, you know, when you see things that you know are staged and stuff like that, what's a proper way to deal with that, to handle that? Which I think you said answer, send in light and love, you know, imagine a bubble. Another one, Ruth, she said, yes, you are right. I sent unconditional love to some Anunnaki, and they dissolved into a liquid spiral and transformed into beautiful beings. It is a fourth dimensional ability. Another question from Casey, how do I find out my galactic origin? Great question.
Well, first of all, what I do, I kind of cheat. I'll tell you how. I ask people.
The Akashic Records.
I actually ask people to send me a picture of them, and then I will ask my guides. And sometimes, well, for example, this was a really good story. A young man called me and wanted to know who these ships were that kept coming to him. He had been filming them for years, but never had contact. And so I said, send me your picture. Well, when he sent me his picture, and I looked at it, all of a sudden a Syrian warrior of light came in and telepathically began communicating with me. And I think a lot of us have this ability in which we see them through our third eye, and it's like Skyping with them, with my third eye, when they come in and communicate with me. And this particular Syrian warrior of light had a great message for this young man. And so I called the guy back, and I said, well, if you want to know who your star family is, they're Syrian warriors of light. In fact, I was being told that about 2 weeks to 10 days before this guy called me, that he had walked into his apartment. It's at nighttime, and I said he had to walk to the lamp in the center of the living room to turn on the light because there was no light switch. And he wanted to know how I knew that. And that was because the Syrian warrior of light was showing me his apartment. And I said, you felt like somebody tapped your shoulder. Is that right? At first he said, no, I don't remember. And then suddenly he goes, oh my gosh, yes, I remember. I thought somebody broke into my apartment, and I turned around to see who was there, and I couldn't see anyone, but I felt a presence. And I said, that is your best friend on the ship. He misses you. He broke protocol because he couldn't help but just want to be with you. And he touched you on the shoulder lovingly to let you know he misses you. The phone went silent as he shed a few tears of joy. But it changed his life. You see, many people will tell me about the different contacts they're having. And one such person was having contact with a being that was not at all human. And it did scare him. And it was a mix, again, a hybrid of sorts. And it didn't really have a friendly looking face, but they are very benevolent, extremely benevolent. So he would say every time they'd come, they would paralyze him so he couldn't move. And they were giving him injections, and they were doing different things to him. And he was angry. And so I made the suggestion, is it possible that this being is part of your star family? What I want you to do on your next experience with this being, because they came every month, almost timely, and I said, I want you to ask them. Just ask them, surround them in the light, send them love, and say, are you my family? Well, eventually he found out they were or are his family. They have got him suited now. They have a suit they made for him. He actually was taking 6 different medications because, being that I believe he was a hybrid, but he had a lot of different diseases and illnesses that were abnormal. The doctor had had him on these medications for many years, and after an experience that he had had where they were doing a healing on him, I asked him to go to the doctor and find out if there was any change in his medical report. And sure enough, they took him off all but one pill. They kept him on the blood pressure pill, and all the others, the doctors had no explanation how he could miraculously overcome these diseases. So you see, our star family, they're doing everything they can to make sure that we're ready, we're prepared. They want to help us. Those of you who are having problems connecting, again, are you believing in yourself? When you work with the sculptures, are you surrounding the sculptures when you get them with light and sending unconditional love into their heart chakras? Because that's what causes them to bond with your DNA. And by the way, every one of us, starseeds, designed our own DNA strand before we came here. That strand consists of when we were going to meet each other, how we were going to find our partners or our other co-workers on this mission, and what we will be doing and how we will be coming into our powers. Many of you have integrated already with several aspects of yourself, because that is when you come into your highest power. It would be like Jacqueline Smith, for example, when she united with her mantis being and 2 other Zeta beings, and one of them an Arcturian being, and some others. And all the powers together strengthen our ability. Are there any more questions at this point?
Yes, a couple of them. A couple of them are actually very specific. One is what sculptures, where can you find the sculptures? Someone missed part of it, so if you just talk about the sculptures and your website again where people could see them. And then Brandy said, could I send love to everyone and just now worry about specifics, not worry about specifics too much? Just send love to everybody.
Absolutely. In fact, what my guides told me to do is they said, imagine the white light being like water, like you're washing the whole planet with white light. And if you program your white light so that every person it touches, that unconditional love goes directly to their heart, you can do that. And that's what we're really asking you to do, is start doing this all the time, not just when you think about it. We have to get used to doing it. Even I do. The other thing I was shown was that we all came in with what we call our power source, which are our abilities to move between dimensions and fly, to do everything. But when we feed into negativity, anger, resentment, anything like that, we cause a perforation in that power source. And what that means is that some of our light is leaking out. And I am a great example of what not to do because a little over a year ago, I was very upset, and I was quite having negative thoughts so badly that all of a sudden I got picked up by a 4th dimensional being and thrown headfirst into a pillar. And the only thing that kept me from breaking my neck was that I put my right arm up and it crushed my wrist and broke my arm in 2 places. And this is just one example of their power. When we are out of control, this is what they can do to us. While I was having my surgery, well, actually the day before my surgery, I got a phone call from one of the beautiful Starseeds I love so much, her and her husband, and their 10-year-old boy had gotten into some trouble at school, and he had actually gotten an attachment from it. Now, both the husband and wife are Starseeds, very powerful Starseeds, and the children, I'm sure, are, but he didn't understand, and he got mixed up with the wrong crowd. And what happened to him was he was picked up and literally thrown like I was, and fortunately, no broken bones. And so I had to tell his parents what to do. So I'm going to tell you all this because if you need it, this will help you tremendously. He got an attachment and he was not acting himself. So I had her stand in front of him, or actually kneel in front of him, her heart to his heart, her husband's heart to the back side of where the son's heart is. And I had both of them surround the child in white light and themselves and send unconditional love into his heart. And at the same time, they said to the attachment, "Thank you so much for the lesson. Thank you for showing us where our weaknesses are, so we can turn them into strengths. I love you unconditionally, and if you are not ready to go, if you are ready to go to the light, I will be happy to take you to the light. At that time, the light or the being released. But the other thing you can do, if you ever have an attachment on yourself, which I had happen for 3 weeks solid, and the reason it happened to me was my guide said, how can you teach others if you can't do it yourself? And it took me 3 weeks, can you believe that? And finally I got to that point where I literally would take my hand, I would pull the being off my back and to my heart, and I would treat it like a spoiled child throwing a fit, and I would say to it again, I love you unconditionally. Thank you for showing my weaknesses. I am now ready to make them my strengths and take you to the light. And they left, and they never came back. So we can do this. It's all about love and nothing less than love.
And that's such a powerful lesson, because what I was taught is that if there are entities in a room, and I've experienced demons, I've experienced them trying to get in my third eye, I've been touched by demons, angels, I've had lots of experiences myself, is to claim your space. Universal law. If you are not of the light and love, you are not welcome here, you must leave now. It's as simple as that. And you claim your space and they will disappear. And they will go to smoke or whatever else there is. So
Absolutely.
Very powerful lesson for every listener on here to know that. Claim your space. Universal law is that simple. One last question, and I'll give you the floor again, is I'm ready to connect with my star family, but don't know how. I mentioned the Akashic Records before, because that was a way that I sort of cheated, went into my Akashic Records, and wanted to know my history. So that was how I did it. But Cynthia, your response, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, the best way that I know, as far as me helping you, is if you send me a picture of yourself, a front picture close up, and then a side profile of your ears. And the reason I say that is because when I started making the sculptures, I would get telepathic communication, and they would tell me what significant features that some of the starseeds came in with so they could identify one another. We had an example at that of that in 1997 when a man came to a group meeting and said he was a Syrian warrior of light, and was very upset because he said, I thought I would find my brothers and sisters here, and none of you are Syrian warriors of light. And he could tell by their features. But what was interesting was that the same man, the very first Syrian warrior of light I ever sculptured, was identical to what this man looked like. So I felt it necessary to send him the sculpture and hopefully diffuse his upset about not finding his brothers and sisters at our meeting. But you will find them. In fact, I will say this, that the alliances have asked me to please make sure that the starseeds find groups in their area, whether they be starseed groups, experiencer groups, or contactee groups. Just find a group in your area and join it, because you might be surprised how many people in that area you will be working with. They may be on your team, or they may be assisting you, or you may be assisting them at some point. But you need to find them. We've also been getting a bunch of the groups together and asking anyone that has a group to please contact me so that we can put you in a database for anyone seeking a group to join. We want you to have as many people as you can, starseeds as you can, that you can assist at this time, and that we can all work together. As far as sculptures, I would like to actually, could I take just couple seconds here to go get a sculpture?
Sure, absolutely, please.
Okay.
Maybe an Arcturian.
It is our Arcturian.
Awesome. And I found Cynthia years ago doing research myself, and her sculptures were quite powerful when I saw them, and quite reasonable as well. I see some more questions coming in here, so as soon as Cynthia has some more time, I will ask the questions. Okay.
You can see this. Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm putting the Arcturians in the white robes now because that's the master robe. And people that have been getting these have been on the ship. But I did something that I put what's called, it's a white glowing glitter that I put on the outfit. And I didn't realize, I thought it would only glow if you put it out in the sun and brought it in. Well, I had 6 of these that were ordered, and I had been making them, had them on the countertop, and turned off the light, and my husband all of a sudden said, "Oh my gosh, they're all glowing. They're glowing." And so they do.
Wow.
They do glow. And
that wasn't by chance, because I know that on our home planet of Arcturus, our silver white robes do illuminate. So you were right on with that.
Good. Oh, good. But I just love them so much, and I love their energy. But I wish that I had more time to make the ones that I recently met in the hospital, because they were so beautiful. In fact, anyone that sees the new Star Trek movies, the new Star Trek movie that came out, there are a couple of the beings in that look so much like the ones that visited me. One of them was this beautiful female that had like a pearly white skin, and she had ridges down the side of her face, but she was just so perfect. I can't help but fall in love with all these different beings. They're so unique. And the other thing that happened, there's another gentleman I would like to mention. His name is David Godson, who has done 9,000 drawings of interdimensional beings that have come to him, and these are 4th dimensional beings. So this is someone you might want to check out in the future for maybe a talk. And what was interesting was he asked them to come to me, and while the doctors were checking me to see how my brain was functioning, they were standing behind him and beside them, and the doctors had no idea, and they were waving and they were making faces and doing things trying to cheer me up, you know? And they were so precious, and they are adorable. And when I first saw David's drawings, I thought, wow, they look almost animated. And you know what? It doesn't matter. They're adorable. They're precious. So there is so much we get to explore.
Yeah. There's a few questions coming in here, so I'll just try to roll through some of them. This one, how can we learn to communicate telepathically, which is, I think, is a great question. And just to share a little bit, when I went aboard the Arcturian ship, when I first was aware I was there, the first thing came over me was fear when I was looking at the planet. And I was trying to scare myself. I was like, how come I can't feel fear? And then they telepathically told me, there is no fear here. There is none of that here. This is just love here. And I was like, it can't be true. This is great. And so you can't freak yourself out in those higher vibrations of staying in your heart space, as they showed me telepathically. But what is a good tool or way people can use to try to hone in on their telepathy?
Wow. The only thing I can say is it came natural for me when I was younger, and up until 1994, when I had a very serious accident where I lost 1/3 of my brain. I keep having brain loss, you know. I don't know what it is about me, but I lost 1/3 of my brain and lost my abilities to communicate and to see inside bodies. I used to be able to see inside bodies as well, to see what was wrong with them. Little by little, it's coming back. And I think the most important thing about telepathic communication is not trying too hard. Sometimes if we try too hard, we literally frustrate ourselves and expect more than what we should. So we just have to listen. They tell me, quiet your head sometimes, and they'll say, just listen, just be. So we do have, I work with a group, as Barbara Lamb had
Can you
talked
spell
about.
his name? You mentioned a name. Someone asked a question. Can you spell his name, the gentleman you just mentioned?
Okay, David Godson, and his last name is spelled Godson.
Great. And also another question, does Cynthia sculpt with her eyes open or closed while channeling? Do you sculpt with your eyes open or closed?
They're always open. And right now, because of the tumor, I did lose a little bit of my vision, but I have to now wear much stronger glasses so that I can see detail. And it's okay, you know, as long as I'm making them and so forth. I had two psychics one time that came over to my house at the same time. They didn't know each other, and I wasn't expecting it. And they were watching me as I was painting a sculpture. And one of the girls said, "Oh my gosh, do you see that? There's white light coming out of her eyes into the sculpture." And the other one said, "No, I don't see it, but I feel it. I feel the energy coming out of her." So I think with all of us, regardless of what we do, that our powers comes, again, by, number one, believing, being patient, and just doing it. Just keep trying it. In fact, interestingly enough, lately, as soon as I think of someone, it's like they call me. Or someone will be thinking of me, I'll call them. And it's like we're tuning in now. So don't be so afraid that it won't happen, that you sabotage yourself from the experience.
A couple more questions. Could we have been many different beings? If so, would they be our star family? Have we lived on past other planets? I believe yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. By the time we starseeds have come to Earth,
by the time we get here, we've been around.
We sure have.
We've been around.
Yeah, we've had many aspects of ourselves, and we share the knowledge with the same soul, you know. And a lot of times when we've been regressed into a past life, are we truly, is it that past life that this particular aspect has experienced, or are we tuning in to another aspect's past life? Mm. And have you ever experienced being on other planets where it's totally devoid of anything? For example, I was on a planet that the brightest daylight would be what we would call a full moon here. Mm. And the buildings were very tall and narrow. And I remember walking on the street wondering, okay, is this safe? You know, because I couldn't see anything. It was so dark. And then I thought, you know, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm sure I'll be where I need to be. And then I had another experience where I found myself up at the top of a mountain with a gadget. I had no idea how to work it. I'm holding on to this gadget. It looks kind of like one of those exercise equipments where for the midriff, where it's got a tire and you roll on it, right? Mm-hmm. But this had like claws, and it was going between a crevice of these mountains. I mean, this was thousands of feet up, and the claws dig in to the crevice and was pulling me up. And I'm thinking, okay, I want to go back into my own body, and whoever has this body can get back into it. I couldn't wait to get out of it because it scared me. I'm afraid of heights. So we will have a lot of different experiences with our other aspects. And
from my understanding as well, even as an Arcturian being, which I consider myself, my soul was born from the star of Arcturus. We have 4 surrounding planets. Each planet represents another stage of consciousness. That alone, we've lived on 4 different planets just to get out of that star system to start traveling to other ones, which leads into another question. Could my connection to the elementals through my practice keep the star people from contacting me? And my first thought is my practice is maybe she's a stripper, or maybe you're doing something that's not of the light, or you're, follow me, you're doing something that is blocking her from her star. I'm not saying that's what she's doing. It was actually a guy, but I'm just saying they're doing it. Sorry, Philip. Just what came to mind was something, you're doing something not right, or something out of the light that is blocking that star family to contact you.
Absolutely. But
as a hitman, you know, for example.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, one of the most surprising things was that back in about 2009, a gentleman had ordered a Syrian warrior of light, and he kept calling me about, well, at least once a week, and he was very disappointed he wasn't having contact. And so I told him, I said, well, again, you're more afraid of not having contact than of having contact. So that's why. Well, what happened was I told him he had to work on it, and he had to assume that he would have contact, and he had to thank them, because if you assume you're going to have contact and thank them for the contact, it's like it's already done. Well, he calls me up while he's driving on the freeway, and he says, you're not going to believe this. There's a ship over my car right now, and it's staying with me, and this is in broad daylight. And then finally it took off, and he was so excited, and it gave him hope. So you see, our star family, they want to connect with us, but they also have to protect us. When we first came in, we couldn't know who we were. We had to know what it was to be human, to live amongst the humans. How can we help them if we don't understand them? When I first started making the sculptures, what was really interesting about it was at first I heard voices tell me how to make them, and then I began going into a trance and making them. And the Andromedan was one of the first ones I went into a trance with. And when I was done and I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, and who are you? And my guide said, those who know them will tell you. And sure enough, the next conference I went to, a man came up to me and used his pendulum, and everybody said he knows all about the different star races. And he said, Andromedan, Budic tribe. And that really blew me away. But I also did others that were like the salamander people. I've also gotten to meet the alligator people. I've met so many different races, and they're wonderful. I even took a walk with this alligator reptilian looking being, and it was pretty neat. He had a big fat tail. I'll never forget. I felt so honored. He talked like a professor. I swear he was like an English professor. It was awesome. Let's see. And as far as, there was a question also on the website and where to go. Is that will be posted at some time, is that correct? Or shall I give the website?
Give the website out again. Yeah, of course it'll be posted, but if you could give it out, yes, please.
Okay. So the website is called etsculptors.com, and it's with an S because a friend of mine, Diane, makes some of the sculptures. She makes her own sculptures, of course, and I make the ones that I do. And I would love to be able to have some new sculptures available. However, I do know that the events that are coming are going to be speeding up, so I won't have probably more than a year at the most to make the sculptures. So I think I'm going to be sticking with the ones I've got for now. And maybe in the when I leave here and we're done with our mission, I'll be able to make some more. Who knows? Maybe the next lifetime I'll have some more. So, any other questions?
An odd question, but is there an ET that looks like a lizard, kind of, but there is no head? Like where the head would be, it looks like a stub that just simply doesn't have a head on it. Any comment on that?
Wow. Well, after the experiences I've had recently, I would say anything you could imagine is possible. I've never seen that being, but I do know there's some that, wow, I had an experience with a fourth dimensional being that kept coming in and it would slither like a snake, but I couldn't see a head on it. But it was just quite interesting. And yet I wasn't afraid of it. I left my arm on the sofa as I watched it like slither over my arm, even though I didn't really feel it other than a little bit of energy moving. And that was it. But there are so many varieties. The most important thing that we need to understand, though, is that as long as we stay always in our light with unconditional love, it doesn't matter what beings we meet or see, regardless of how rogue they are, because we will still maintain our power. They have to honor us as we honor them for what they are here to do too. We may not agree with what they do, but we understand that this is all about the process of learning. Like the Creator Source years ago came to me and had me do a talk in which the Creator Source said, the Creator was, just was, knew all, had all, wanted to know what it was to start from nothingness. So the Creator created selves, source selves, in which each of us are source selves, that it lives vicariously through and has the ability to experience coming from nothingness to becoming all it is. And when you think about it, how many of us have a higher self that is on the council, or maybe with the Great White Brotherhood, or works with the Federation, that is one of the councils, the Council of 12, Council of 9. It doesn't matter. There's so many councils out there. But what's exciting is the opportunity we have to experience all the different races that we want to experience, that we can even visit them. In fact, many of us are being visited by beings that in our previous existence, we had gone to their planet. We had helped them. We had become friends with them. We learned to love. Well, we didn't have to learn to love. We just loved them, and they loved us. And several of the people I've talked to have actually had these beings come to them just to let them know, we miss you, and we honor you. And that's it. They're so wonderful. And I just can't help but fall in love every time I experience them. I just wish I wish humans that didn't believe in ETs or thought they were evil, I wish they could experience the beauty of them and all the lessons we've got. And even when I came home from the hospital, all of a sudden, the birds were communicating with me, the animals were, even the insects, and I'm looking at the world in a totally different way. And it's like I got a renewed look at what life really is all about and how precious every single moment is and every single being here. Of course, I'm not wild about flies, but...
Thank you. It's so funny because I know for myself many times when I leave my body in astral travel, the first thing I tell myself is, Jonah, stop complaining so much on Earth. You're so lucky you're there. Get back in your body. Stop always trying to get out there. You know, it's and they're right. Heaven on earth is this. This is, we're witnessing this firsthand. Trillions and zillions of beings want to be incarnated here right now, but there's only 7 billion of us, which tells me that all 7 billion of us are very, very important people from all different home planets and all different species of where we all came from, because there's many more of that than souls if you do the actual numbers. So every single one of us who's here is a very special soul on some level, bringing whatever information they're absorbing here back to their home planet, to their race or whatever. Another question. Cynthia, have you seen any amphibians? Krista channels those. Have you seen any amphibians?
I have. They're adorable. I love them. Yes. And I don't know which ones she's seen, but I've actually made some. And I actually channeled a few of them when I made them. But what was interesting was a guy one time said he wanted to get a sculpture and he didn't know which one to get. And my guide said, just give him one of those beings. So an amphibian being. So I gave him one and I said, look, just work with this and see what happens. Well, a week later he calls me up and he says, I haven't had anything happen and I've been meditating every single night with it. And I said, okay, well, my guide said you don't believe that you're really going to have the experience. You're more afraid you're not. So it's the same old story as that happens to a lot of people. But I also told him, I said, they want you to take your crystals and cleanse your crystals and form a circle. Put in the center of the circle your sculpture and your favorite crystals, one or two of them. And then I want you to tell them, when you start meditating, I want you to send unconditional love to the sculpture, into the heart chakra, and say, I am ready. Well, a week later, he calls me up and he sounds like he's on his last leg. And I asked him, I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I've had contact every night for a week now and I haven't slept. They just keep going and teaching me things. And he said, I don't know what to do. I can't sleep now. And I said, very simple. Tell them, I need a break. Give me a few nights sleep and then come back. Well, this guy did phenomenal. And not only did he do phenomenal, he could actually design a spacecraft and know everything about the propulsion system and so forth. In fact, he corrected some people at one of, I think it was Omni magazine had an article on something to do with the UFOs, and he responded to it, to that magazine article. About 2 weeks later, he has a knock on the door and it's the government. And they asked him how he knew how to build this ship and the propulsion system and everything. And he said he just knew. He didn't have an answer. And they said, if you will go to college and get a degree in whatever it was, I'm not sure what it was, engineering or whatever, that they would pay his college if he went to work for the government. He chose not to. But unfortunately, he did move to Colorado, to Denver, Colorado, where they have that big underground base that's under the airport there.
And I have only, this is from Philip, I have only been contacted by a being I call the Green Dragon. She and a wolf guide are the only ones I have made contact with. Is that just because I'm an earth spirit?
I actually, you know, that there are, as we know, on other planets, there are the dog people or wolf people and so forth. And I can't honestly answer, Philip, with that question, other than I would say keep an open mind. And the other thing is that he said the one is green and it looks like a dragon. Is that correct? It was a dragon that he...
A dragon, yes, correct. I'm looking, I didn't say a color, I was looking for
okay.
A dragon.
Now, there are draconians that are benevolent. So we can't always put a tag on them as being rogue or evil. I had a guy, actually, I have a dragon type. It's a hybrid dragon type that this guy had contact with, and it's got teeth. I'll get that one. I've never shown it. I made this specifically for a person about 6 years ago, and a couple other people saw it and wanted it. And let me get that. Now this one is made of clay. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it okay?
Yes, we could see it, yep.
Okay, now this one is benevolent, and I know he shows his teeth, but what's interesting about him is when he would come to this guy, he never did anything to the guy, and of course the guy was afraid of him, but he would just smile at him. And it was because he had the little itty-bitty sharp teeth that it was a little unnerving for this guy, but he has since, of course, made peace with it. And there are so many different races that get a bad rap, and we've got to stop giving them a bad rap. And we've got to understand that, yes, there are dark ones, rogue ones, and we are going to have a lot of them come to Earth. I was shown that they're going to be really pouncing on us in the very near future. But again, we have nothing to fear. We're stronger than they are. We have greater powers than they do because we live in the Christ consciousness. We love totally, unconditionally from our hearts. And what greater power is that than love, you know?
And Philip answered that it was a greener emerald dragon that aids me in my healing work. She is very enlightened. She claims she predates the Draconians. Wonderful.
Oh, I think that's awesome. And I definitely believe that this is from another world, and this could be her star family.
And I agree with you about the Draconians because I've talked to people that have interactions with reptilians themselves that have had pleasant experiences with them. In fact, I've had my own experiences with them. They weren't so pleasant, but I've had others that had pleasant ones. So they're not all bad, as you said. We shouldn't label all the reptilians as flesh-eating, you know. They're not all like that. They have a consciousness as well, although some of them may be ritualistic and do that because they're with the Bilderbergs or Rothschilds or whatever, and they're doing that kind of stuff. Some of them are bad, but not all of them. So thank you for saying that as well, because that is, you know, needs to be understood that they are not all bad. Bashar says most near-death experiencers are walk-in or transitions. Anything on walk-ins or transitioners?
I've met some. I'm not one, but I know that there sometimes when a soul is unable to handle a situation, and of course, when we first come to Earth, we have chosen what lessons we need to make us stronger. So sometimes the starseed, the lesson is so hard on them that they can't handle it and they have to leave. And then that's when the walk-in comes. Now, one person in particular happened to be a master that came into this body when the man had committed suicide, and he came into the body and took over the body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very powerful. I remember when I first woke up 8 years ago, I had a very quick awakening. I was activated, and my spiritual guide at that time that helped activate me, I was so torn and for days, hysterical crying. My whole world was just opened up, and I said, I want to leave. I want to get out of here. I can't deal with this. I want to kill myself. And what his answer was after I went ranting and raving was, if that's how you feel, that's okay, and you can do that. And I was like, whoa. Oh, but then I thought about it, and it's exactly what you just said. Some of us cannot handle the density here, and it is too hard. And what that made me do internally was make myself stronger. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to finish out my mission, and suicide's the last thing that I want to do. But for some of us starseeds that are not from here, most of us, all of us, their uncomfortability levels can get to that. I've lost many. I just lost a best friend a few weeks ago, brain aneurysm. my age, 38 years old, just like that. Just spoke to him last week. So when people leave like that, it's for a specific reason. He was having a very tough life, my friend who just passed. And last time we talked, he called me up crying. He was hurting so much. So maybe he had to leave. And my understanding helped me be okay with his transition. So very important information that was brought through today. We have about 10 minutes left, Cynthia. So if you can, maybe give out any upcoming workshops, references, webinars, books, your website, any information you can give to all the participants, please.
Okay. Again, the website is etsculptors.com. And my email address is ctcrawford1949@gmail.com. I am going to be doing a conference in October that's going to be in Phoenix. And I apologize for not having the information of the name of the conference and the date, but we're still working on that. So I will get that out to people when it gets closer, probably in September, so that you'll know which one I'll be doing for those that are in the Phoenix area or coming to this area. As far as what else I do a lot of counseling. I am not a degreed counselor. I just counsel people from my star family. So when I do counseling, I tune into them and let them give me the information or advice that they want to share with you, or that will help you do your best. And as far as when we were talking about others that have left, I do want to make one quick statement. Many of us are leaving because we have to get back to the ships. We're going to be working from the ships and on the ground, but we need a better, healthier body, and especially for me, I need a young one. And that's what's going to be happening. So I had one guy that in 2010, that actually it was 2011, that died with absolutely no cause of death. He had nothing wrong with his heart, brain, any organs. He just died. And he came to me when his sister called me and wanted to tell me that they were having a memorial for him. And he came through and spoke through me to his sister, and he told her things that only those two knew in order to validate that he had come through. And what was interesting was he's the captain of a Syrian warrior of light ship, and he'd always said he never ever dreamt, and yet every night he was on the ship taking care of his ship and his crew. And then during the day he was on Earth, and now he needed to be here or on the ship full time. So many of us will be going back and forth. So those that have already left, trust me, they're still working with us. They're still helping us in many ways.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. And there's a couple more comments here. It's etsculptures.com. I know you wrote that on there. And what about the 4-foot-tall blue dragons? Any information on them?
Wow, I don't, but I'd love to get it if anybody has it. I'm sorry, I don't.
There's so many different beings out there. I know we had a guest yesterday said that he knows of 10,000, I think he said, of different races of beings. I mean, the latest number I told to another speaker yesterday was the amount of stars that have been found in the visible universe that we could see is 26 sextillion, which is a 26 with 21 zeros behind it. That's in our visible spectrum of stars. You can't even imagine how many planets are around those stars, but that's the amount of just visual stars that we could see just here on Earth. So the amount of life in this universe alone and the multiverse is astronomical. So the 7 billion of us that are here, every one of us is important and has a very important part to play. I firmly believe.
And when we're not doing our missions, we get to go out and explore these planets, and they are awesome. And also watch the planets that they are creating life on them, and how they do it. It's just beautiful. It's wonderful out there.
Another question, how often do you get sick due to being a hybrid, not personally you, but to being a hybrid? Is it okay to refer to you that way for this question? I mean, not saying it's okay to refer to you as a hybrid, no offense, but how often do you think hybrids get sick, or do you get sick because you're a hybrid? Any correlation with that?
Well, when I was a child, I would go into a coma almost every year because I had very bad lungs. And I also have very porous bones, like the Zeta, because I'm 28% Zeta, and that shows up in my bones. But yeah, I'm more susceptible to getting sick. I get terrible welts from even an ant bite. But you know, it doesn't matter. It's all about just being in the moment and love.
Yes, I agree with that. I think I'm the opposite. I don't think, I'm not saying I can't get hurt, knock on wood, but I've done a lot and never seriously, thank God, injured myself. So I'm blessed for that. But being these different hybrids and different entities, we are susceptible to certain things. Some can't go out in the sunlight, some can't do this, some can't do that. But the bottom line is we're all lucky enough and blessed to be here walking on planet Earth right now, which is heaven on earth. And that's the blessing that we all have. So despite limitations, we're still here living and breathing, enjoying this while we're here.
You know, there's one thing I want to say. Twice I was, they used a device on me, and when I say they, I mean the NSA. I'm part of a government program, and they didn't used to monitor me because they thought I was a failure as being a superhuman they created. And then when they found out I was having contact frequently, they began monitoring me, and at one point they came into the house, they used a frequency that knocked me out, and they interrogated me, and the men in black were with them. Then, the only reason I know this is that they allowed me, my star family allowed me to wake up just for a split minute to take a look at them, so I understood it was not my star family. And I had dried blood in my belly button where they had injected me with the truth serum. And then a few years later, they injected me in the back of the head with a serum to cause an aneurysm. And at the moment the aneurysm was about to explode in my head, I yelled at my star family and said, if you want me to finish my mission, you need to heal me now. I was out cold, and when I woke up, I was 100% healed. So our star family takes care of us, and we have to know we can demand a healing when needed.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. That's one of the most powerful things I've heard. Not from you, but from someone else at a workshop, is everyone has to remember our galactic family is all out there to support us down here in this density. They're not down here dealing with bills and electric and everything else we got to do. So when you need help, you need to voice it, you need to vocalize it. They can't read your brain. You need to say it out loud. Like when I wanted to go to Burning Man, I didn't get my Burning Man ticket, and I was crying like a baby. I went outside and I screamed out to the mountains, like, I want to go to Burning Man. An hour later, got an email and I got that ticket, and I went to Burning Man in 2012. But it's the intent, it's the vocalization, and it's calling in your guides and angels, because they're all sitting around watching us, waiting us, and they're to help us. We're the ones that signed the contract, like you said, to go down to this low density 3D of Earth and deal with this toughness and feelings and hurt and pain and all this, and they're not. So everyone should know that. Thank you for saying that. You're the second person to say that, and that's such another powerful lesson. You brought so many today, Cynthia. Thank you for that, because people need to know that. If you need help, say it out loud. It will happen like this. I've experienced it many, many, many times, and it works every time. You have to believe it, vocalize it, say it, and the intent behind it has to be pure. You can't just say, oh, I want $1 million. It doesn't work like that. You know, or how are you going to treat that $1 million? Because everyone who's won the lottery, most of them are all broke. So that's not the type of manifestation we're talking about. We're talking about healing. I need healing. Help me. Boom. That's done. I need this. Boom. You know, that's the intent, the vocalization, and verbalize it. Our star family can't read our brains.
You know, that's a good thing as well, because about 4 years ago, I was doing a talk for a little group of about 80 some people, and I needed to get some water and before this thing started, so I drove to a station, and I realized I had no money in my billfold. I'd given it to my husband, and I had a friend with me, and I said, you know, I need the money now. I closed my billfold, and I said, I need it now. Opened it up, and there was a crisp $20 bill in there.
Wow.
So that's manifestation. But I also want to say one other thing, that in 2012, I had 44 people over at my house. I live up against the Superstition Mountains, where there is a ET base under the mountain that is a huge mothership, and there's several different races. Mm-hmm. And what we were doing at that party was we were honoring the star people for all the help they have given us. And do you know, they opened up the veil and came through the veil and showed themselves. We literally had thousands of orbs light up the night sky on the desert in front of the mountain, all different colors, and we had a tall mantis being, we had some Andromedans, we had some Arcturians, we had a little bit of everything that was there, and people were crying. They were so humbled that they came through just to let us know how they were honoring us. So we have to remember, we have to honor ourselves and honor them.